here. What's up, everybody? It's your favorite VCR thief's favorite nerd, and today we are looking at First Goken's Arakusaki, which I think I'd have to check on the spelling of that, but I think it's Arakusaki and it's spelled differently because it's like a third-party shredder. I gotta talk a little bit about this. Yes, I'm getting this video up today. We'll talk about why that's happening as well, but this was sent to me by toyfigure.com. It should also come up under tfmasterpiece.com. I'm gonna have a link in the description to their website where you can buy this, and let me tell you why. I mentioned them in my where to buy video, and the reason why I mentioned them, as I state, was their outstanding customer service that really took me back and took me by surprise. This time was no different. Let me explain the circumstance. As you guys saw, hopefully you saw if you're watching the channel, I went to the beach last week and I already had an arrangement to get this figure through them. They contacted me personally to let me know it was in stock. I asked them if they could hold off on shipping it for a couple days because my neighbors were getting my mail. And if you listen to Nerd Rage Radio, you know that sometimes my neighbors and I, we don't always see eye to eye. That's not a conversation for right here. This was a good neighbor that was getting my mail, but I didn't want them inundated with packages like sometimes happens at my house. I asked them if they could hold off for a couple days so they could mail it and have it to me by the time I got back in town, and they did. They waited until the day I asked, mailed it, so that I would arrive and the package would arrive and there would be no issues. So their customer service always surprises me, so I wanted to make sure that I had a link as to where to buy this figure from them. The other reason why I'm including the link is this. The last time I did the Krang review, they were the last people that I knew of that still had it in stock. Everybody was asking about that figure, where they could get it, because it was sold out everywhere. So don't make the mistake with this one. If you plan on buying it, go ahead and get it now before you run into similar problems. I'm going to be speaking to you very shortly if you should be buying it or if I recommend you buying it. But first, as you know, we got to get through these accessories. So he comes with a staff. It's silver paint and I think that's a silver paint finish and a purple paint added. Nice to have two paint apps. Most of these have two paint apps on each weapon. They're completely fully painted, all of them, which is really nice. An odd detailing is just like a staff. It has these like metal type, like blade type edges, but I think it's a decent sculpt. I think it's pretty cool. This isn't necessarily what I think of when I think of Shredder, but I think it's a pretty cool accessory. Two swords, both of which are painted with the silver and the blue. The blue is like a chrome or metallic type blue. It's sharp. They're both sharp as a tack, so to speak. That's a little pun for those interested. To size. I need to stop. Look, I haven't had much sleep, and the dad jokes are just rolling off the tongue this morning. Pardon me. Red paint and silver paint. Decent sculpt work, like all the blade. There is a lot of sculpt work in all of these accessories, but like all of the blade sculpting that's done there, and it's the same for the swords, like just a ton of sculpt work that's definitely not needed. If that was a clean blade, nobody would say a thing about it. That's just a little extra pride. You know I like pride. Let's keep it moving. One big go tell a friend not to mess with me sword, and that's pretty awesome as well. We got the purple paint and the silver paint, it seems, and it is once again loaded with sculpt work. And then two nunchucks, and once again the orange paint and the silver paint. Now if you'll notice, we have the purple staff, the blue swords, the red size, and the orange nunchucks. Not sure what sort of statement they're trying to make there, but I think it's worth noting that they're either accessorized for him in a color-coded sequence for his adversaries, or maybe it's a tease of things to come, which we'll talk about a bit more at Final Thoughts. The nunchucks, of course, have the paint and sculpt work that we've been looking at, as well as a real-life chain to hold them. You know I'm a fan when they do nunchucks with the real-life chain. Even though, Figuarts has done some stuff where you can make it look like they're swinging and stuff, there's something about the chain that just, like, you can get the added weight to it. It just makes it look good. The other things are his signature kind of hand knives. Like, I don't know, there's a technical name for this. I'm sure there is. I'm sure someone will educate me. And I'm sure after I read the comment, I'll thank them, and then I'll shortly thereafter forget. That being said, they're also painted to the knives. We'll talk about those paint detailings when we look at the figure, and we'll show them inserting to the figure here momentarily, so to speak. And then he comes with a hairpiece. Hairpieces are in this season, but it's actually pretty clever. They have this so you can remove this and add the helmet, it actually comes in packaging with the hairpiece on, and so that the helmet sits more. Pardon me. So the helmet sits more flush on the head of the figure, which was a nice move. And of course, he can hold all of those weapons with no problem. I will say though, as you saw with this hand, and we'll talk, I think, a little bit more about this. It's hard shooting this stuff in sequential order, but he doesn't hold this sai as well. I mean, he'll hold it with no problem. It's not going to fall out. But it is in there relatively loose. However, if you have him hold it kind of this signature way, you'll have no issues whatsoever. He comes with a total of 6 hands, 2 that we already saw on him, plus an additional 4. 2 holding hands with the opening there, you know, so you can have some gimmicky stuff with the weapons. And then the fingers are all a softer plastic, not unlike the Krang that we saw. So getting him to hold the weapons and stuff, as you saw, isn't an issue. And then 2 fist hands, and then 2 more holding hands, which you saw. All of them have the plug-ins for the wrist gauntlets or the top of the hand gauntlets, whatever you want to call them. So that all works well. And these plug into the hands. You'll notice that there is a notch inside the gauntlet. It goes to a corresponding notch in the hand. So the right gauntlet goes with the correct hand. Not to confuse right and left. And it'll hold no problem as long as you have it situated properly. And the helmet just pulls right off. You'll see the corresponding tab in there, and then you can plug in his hair piece if you'd like. I'm not sure why you would like to do this, given how bad, you know what, we have to watch it for the children, folks, the helmet looks, but you have that option if you'd like. And lastly, he comes with this weapon display stage. I know people hate when you have to just put a whole bunch of accessories in the box. I know I do. I love when they do stuff like this, like they did with the Voltron, where you can put the weapons on display. It doesn't always make sense for the character, but when it does, like a Shredder, I think it is awesome. It has the writing here sculpted in. It has a finish like metallic fleck plastic, or I don't know if it's paint on there. It's really well done. And if you have it this way, you can put the hairpiece on here as well if you'd rather not, but it just looks better with the helmet. But if you have this like behind him, it almost looks like he's already conquered his enemies, and it's just a cool thing to have as a display piece. I'm not sure if this is in the instructions or not. I haven't, you know me, I don't look at instructions. Who can be bothered, am I right? But if you can put the, there's a little thing here, you can put the other sword in so it can actually hold all of the weapons with no issue. Only thing I wished maybe is if they didn't hold this sword. You know, I think this is a cool weapon to have him holding anyway, and it had maybe little pegs along the back that you could plug the hands into, that you could just store everything. But given what it is, I think it's an amazing piece. And now we can finally get into what I've wanted to get into the entire time, which is the actual figure. And it's not perfect, but it's pretty good. We'll talk about all of the pros and cons, hopefully, as we go through. Let's start with the head. So the head is on a ball peg. You can see it up in there. The neck gets very narrow, where if you're not careful with the posing, it can look absurd. However, as long as he's not looking up, you should be fine. Because the helmet sculpt and the mask plate, like the face plate, help hide it an awful lot. And I guess they did it so that you could look him to the side. I don't know if that was necessary. I think a wider neck would have been the better choice. The helmet is die cast and it's painted to the nines. This thing is painted to the nines in general, but it looks great. The face, so the eyebrows are sculpted and painted. They look good. Let me see if I can zoom in on that a bit. They look good. The eyes are painted white, which I love. I love when they do white eyes. It's very comic booky to me. I grew up in the 90s, you know, born in the 80s, grew up in the 90s, and the look of that white-eyed comic book look, which was very prevalent in the 90s, is just something that I miss an awful lot. And I like it when they do it on figures. Like, I hate when they do Wolverine's eyes or Batman's eyes or characters that I'm just used to having white-eyed all the time. So I dig that. There's a subtle shading around the eyes of like a reddish brown, and the skin tones in general have this shading, but it's different than that from the eyes, and we'll talk about that when we get there. But it's really well done. The face plane is all sculpted and painted, and you can see the chin and stuff underneath. So really cool, really nice, and I think it is incredibly striking. Let's see. Up to there, it's a double ball peg. So even better. Down to there, and then the swivel and all that stuff. So that all works really well. The neck is a little unsightly, but I haven't taken a picture or put them in a position that I've been happy with where it bothered me. And you know, most stuff bothers me. So let's keep it moving. This part of the cape is an extra piece that's sculpted and then glued on. It comes around the back and it holds the soft goods cape. The soft good cape still isn't as good as I would like a cape to be, but it's not hateful either. One of the problems that I have with it is this like intentional, like, you know, kind of worn and tattered look that's really hard to make look natural, and it doesn't look very natural here either, nor does it looks probably even worse here in the front. The wires do work fairly well, though, as you saw in the opening stuff, or some of the pictures, at least at the end. I've had the cape like off to the side, and it like you can get some really cool looking poses out of it. And overall, it doesn't bother me, but it's still. I still think like it has a little bit more weight and stiffness to it than we've seen in a lot of stuff. But I feel like the best way to handle capes is a really like a thicker velvet, you know, with double fabric on both sides. Like this is one piece of fabric. Like if it was a double piece of fabric, like it's stitched over with the wire here, like you can see. If it was one piece that was stitched together, maybe at the bottom or at in the middle, in the center, the fabric would feel a little bit heavier and it would have a little bit more weight to it. But it's not the best that I've seen, but it's nowhere near the worst. My phone, I mean my my camera's gonna die. Let me plug that in real quick. There we go. No lapse in quality, folks. Or maybe in quality, but at least not in content. Shoulder pads. So they're on ball pegs, and they're connected to the shoulder. I mean, to the collarbones, which is not my favorite way of doing business. It's something we often see in robot figures, but it's not something we often see in high-end human figures. I prefer it connected to the shoulder. I can see why they did it, and you can still pose it a fair bit. It's a softer plastic, especially the tips, but it's all a softer plastic. It's just thicker at the actual armor. So it shouldn't hinder articulation, and you should be able to cover down on the joint fair enough where it doesn't bother you. I'll be honest, I haven't had it bother me. This is sticking up a bit, but it's the wire. But I don't think it's the best way of doing it. That being said, it does work fairly well. Same sort of like this purple metallic and this silver metallic paint added throughout. That looks really good. Real quick, something I want to touch on that I'm going to have to cut in. This ball peg that these shoulder pieces are on, the reason why I was getting in trouble along with the wire getting this one to sit properly is because they're also at hinges inside the torso, which does allow them to fold down more and look a bit more natural. So that is a nice touch. That's something I haven't seen before, I don't think. And it's a nice touch. It's a nice way of doing them if you're going to have them there. So let's talk about the shoulder. Oh, also, you can see the hair is sculpted on the back of the helmet. Nice touch. So let's talk about the shoulders themselves. So you have disc hinge shoulders with a great range, and you can cover down on the joint, so no issues there. You have a butterfly joint. It breaks up the sculpt a little bit, but I think it works fairly well. And then you have the swivel all the way around. You have this subtle shading. It's added just to like the muscle definition. I think it works. It's a little bit more prominent than I would have liked. Like I think they could have gone one shade more subtle, but it doesn't bother you. And under the harsh lights, it's much more prominent than you'll notice on a shelf. You have a bicep swivel. You have a double jointed elbow that gets you a great range. I do have some paint mishaps here. Some silver got outside. They got a little bit out. That's obviously an individual results will vary kind of thing, but it did get a little away from them there. I'm sure there's a ton of paint everywhere, so those things are bound to happen, but it doesn't make them any easier to swallow, so to speak. Wrist swivel and hinge, so you can manipulate the hinge at both sides, so you should be able to get, if I can work it out, both the in-out and the up-down action. I feel like I'm so to speak in this entire review, but you know what I mean. And then you have the gauntlets, which are painted the same way, and they are, that's sculpted on? That's sculpted on. I would have imagined they were glued on, but that's sculpted on. So that's nice as well. Let's put this on there. What's going on? I'm sure I'm doing something. There we go. Okay, so then we have a hinge here, and it's just a hinge, which is weird. I think a double ball peg there would have worked better. But as a result, you get an ab crunch that is significant, but you don't get anything side to side, and you don't get much back. The hinge is also a little loose, and there's a lot of weight up top. Once you get imposed on a shelf, you should be fine, but that is something that I feel like was a mistake. I feel like that should have been a double ball peg, and that would have been an issue that would have been solved. It is sculpted to the 9s, and the bottom has a wash, and I think the top does too. It's just much more subtle. Waist swivel, no problems there. The belt is all sculpted and painted and looks great. This soft piece of pattern, we kind of touched on this already, but it's fine. I think that this tattered look is really hard to do, and it's hard to make it not look cartoony, and make it look like a real piece of fabric that's just worn at the bottom without destroying the fabric. So I get it, but it's not my favorite way of doing business. The hips are disc hinges as well, which act as universals. You get the full Van Damme, as well as, and this was surprising to me, a ratcheted full Monty. Oh no, not the full Monty, not all the way back, which is also okay. But you get a fair bit of range there. And it's ratcheted, which I didn't expect, but was a nice touch. Thigh swivel, that works fine. There's a little bit of sculpt breakup between the thigh and the disc hinge. That's just how that works when you decide to do business that way. And I think it's worth the cost of doing that business. Double jointed knee, great range there. Tons of sculpted details in the pants. No paint added there, but that's like the only place where there isn't paint on this thing, so I think we'll give them a pass for that. We have the shin guards, which have the metallic paint on them, as well as the blades. They're a bit softer plastic as well. And then the feet. This is another one of my minor complaints. They should have had an extra piece of armor to cover down on that joint. That is a bit more unsightly. But you do get a swivel at the ankle, which I think is important. You get a hinge, so you get the ankle tilt up and down, and then you get an old school rocker, which I love. And then you have a toe hinge as well, which is really tight, and there's die cast down here. But toe hinges are hard to do, and this one didn't exactly do a great job, but I think for pictures and stuff or posing, you should be fine. And they're painted to the 9s as well. Back of the figure, we do have some screws, but we don't display our figures from the back most of the time, and the cape covers down on most of it. So all in all, a pretty incredible effort. Size comparison wise, there he is with Krang from the same company. I really dig that look. I love seeing the two of them together. And just for S&Gs, there he is with the turtles. So he's definitely a bit big for the SH Figuarts turtles, but at the same time, two different shells, I don't think it'll bother you, but he definitely is a bit big for those turtles. However, scale is in the eye of the beholder, and they are turtles, and I know people see how Shredder should be in regard to them in different sizes. So if it works for you, cool. But me, I'm definitely going to split up the good guys and bad guys. Final thoughts wise, let's talk about the negatives. There are very few, but they are worth noting. The ab crunch hinge should have been a double ball peg. And if it wasn't going to be a double ball peg, it should have been more of a universal type hinge, and the tolerance should have been a bit better. It would have been nice to have a piece of armor to cover down on the ankles. The cape should have been a different type of fabric, and it should have been double layered. I wish the skin shading was slightly more subtle, and I do mean ever so slightly. And I wish the neck was a little bit thicker. However, as you can see, it rarely poses an issue aesthetically. First and foremost, you know me, this thing is painted to the 9s. It is extremely well done in that regard. The accessories are smart, they're interesting, they're suggestive, they make you think about maybe what's to come. I'd love to see this company do more figures. I'd personally love to see them do more obscure characters. It'd be nice to start getting some updated representations of some more obscure characters. I'd love to see them do a Metalhead. Am I right? Especially with the way they do metallic paint. Whew! Pardon me. The articulation, not an issue. Everything works the way you'd like it to, and his presence is so strong that it displays pretty much perfectly in any pose you put him in. The materials are great. The plastics are great. The weight of the figure due to the die cast feels good in your hand. The sculpt is amazing, and I can't wait to see what they have coming in the future. So far, this company is 2 for 2 with me, and I am just as interested, I think, as anyone else in terms of what they have coming down the pike. Can I tempt you with some third-party Star Wars stuff? So yeah, if you're a fan of Shredder, I definitely recommend it. If you're a fan of Ninja Turtles, I definitely recommend it. If you're a fan of just cool action figures, I definitely recommend it. And I recommend that you buy it from toyfigure.com. Take a chance on them. If you've never used them, their customer service is one of the best I've ever experienced in terms of buying toys for grown man children. But yeah, I'm anxious to get this guy on the shelf. No skit today, sorry about that. I just got a busy day and I wanted to get this review up. A lot of people have been asking about it, and the figure's honestly good enough where it deserves a little special review day. But I got a lot on my plate today, and I got to record Nerd Rage in about an hour and 15 minutes. So with that being said, strongly recommend. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.